America. This is Mark Dunagan with the Daily Answer. In today's program, we want to talk about the devil is real. And inspiration for this particular podcast came from listening to a sermon by Roger Polanco, a very energetic and passionate Christian who preaches on the East Coast. And thank you, Roger, for the great ideas and for the inspiration. Satan is not all-powerful, and Satan can be resisted. We are told in 1 Peter chapter 5 and in verse 8, be of sober spirit, be on the alert. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around or about like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. But resist him, firm in your faith. I think we at times miss a simple word in the admission, in these admonitions, particularly as we read it from the book of James chapter 4, resist the devil and he will flee from you. Resist the devil and he does not merely step back like he moves out of our face about a foot and it gives us a little personal space, but rather James says resist him and he flees. In another passage, Paul says that as Christians, we should not be ignorant of how the devil works, or Paul would call them Satan's schemes. 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 11, so that no advantage would be taken of us by Satan, for we are not ignorant of his, depending on your translation, his devices, his schemes. But that word schemes notes that the devil thinks, the devil plans, the devil sets traps, the devil has a strategy, the devil has been studying you, and the devil has been coming up with a way to take you out, and he's going to try to take you out. He's going to try to make you ineffective. And for those of you that are still faithful, for those of you who have been Christians for a number of years, and I'm coming up on 43 years myself, if you're still in the game, God bless you. If you're still in the game, praise the Lord. If you're still in the game and you haven't been taken out, thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your faithfulness. Thank you for your dedication, that you've kept your head on straight, even though it has not been easy at times. If you're looking for how Satan works, a great passage besides the temptation with Eve and Adam in the garden would be 1 John chapter 2, verse 15. Do not love the world, nor the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world. And here are the common avenues of temptation, the tools that Satan often uses: the lust of the flesh, appealing to your bodily appetites, the lust of the eyes, trying to suck you in through your sight and your imagination, and the boastful pride of life. That's arrogance, like, well, I don't know about that, or that doesn't seem right to me, or I don't agree with that. Well, that's the boastful pride of life. It says that's not from the Father, that's of the world. But 17 says the world is passing away and also its lusts. The one who does the will of the God abides forever. Man, that's a wake-up call. That's a wake-up call for myself, someone who came out of the world and was involved in different sinful activities that were pleasurable for the moment, just a moment. We are all headed for a place. We are all headed for a place. And the wicked are all headed for a place. If you're not a Christian, you are headed for a place that the lusts of the world are not present. Now, it doesn't mean that you still don't have those appetites, but the fulfillment of those sinful desires does not exist. Hey, heads up, heads up. Do not create an appetite for anything in this life that cannot be fulfilled in eternity. Wow. Boy, because that sounds like 99.9% of your existence is going to be spent somewhere else, and it's you're going to be there. Well, Roger asked the question, How often do we think about Satan? Is Satan even on our radar? And sadly, God gets blamed for a lot of the bad things that happen in the world. And no one thinks about Satan, the true cause of those things, the murderer and the liar from the beginning. And yet, you look at the way Jesus taught and the way the apostles taught, and those individuals considered the devil as very active and incredibly real. For example, Paul spoke of the thorn in the flesh that he had as a messenger of Satan. 2 Corinthians 12. He said in 1 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 18 that he had wanted to come, but Satan hindered him. Satan had the ability to mess with his travel plans. That's the involvement that Satan has in this world. Jesus spoke of Satan as being there when the word of God is taught. Mark 4:15 in the parable of the sower. You're hearing the word of God, but you're not paying attention and you're sidetracked and you don't understand it, and Satan snatches the word out of your heart. That's active. That shows you also how much Satan believes in the power of the gospel. He is afraid of that message. Do anything to distract somebody. Do anything to get their mind on something else. The preacher's up there giving a plan of salvation. Man, get those people thinking about what's for lunch today, or this, my back's starting to hurt me, or I heard a baby crying in the back, or whatever. But just get these people distracted so they don't hear the life-saving message. The lie of Ananias and Sapphira, Satan was behind that. They had free will. They had choice. He did not overrule them, but he was involved. Acts chapter 5, verse 3. And Satan entered the heart of Judas. Again, Judas had free will. He was not overpowered, but he allowed that to happen. He starts pilfering from the money box, John chapter 12, and then he ends up selling out the Son of God for 30 pieces of silver. And that's not the last time that happened. In Ephesians chapter 2, Satan is called the prince of the power of the air. And that's an intriguing passage because, first of all, it says that we were children of wrath. That is outside of Christ. We were simply children that were bringing God's wrath upon ourselves because of our actions. And we formerly walked in our trespasses and sins. We lived in them according to the course of this world. We followed the advice of the world. We followed the advice of the culture. We followed all the popular trends and fads. And according to the prince of the power of the air, of the spirit that is now working in the sons of disobedience. Again, that's not a working against your will, because the same Bible talks about God working in you. It's a working you cooperate. And here you only got two choices. You either cooperate with God working in you through his word, or you cooperate with Satan working in you. But something's going to work in you and you make the choice. Roger had said that Satan has his Kool-Aid. Man, we came through Las Vegas from Zion National Park, and we went from the beauty of God's creation at Zion to superficial Plasticville, and where every billboard after another and every big screen TV after another was selling Satan's Kool-Aid. Satan's Kool-Aid is being freely dispensed on Facebook, in the movies, music, pop culture, you name it. Satan's Kool-Aid, the prince of the power of the air. So what are you drinking? What are you breathing in? What sort of atmosphere surrounds you? And what sort of atmosphere are you breathing in? Is it the prince of the power of the air? What is it? Remember, he's after you, and he's after your loved ones, and he doesn't play fair, and he's underhanded. And he has a plan, as we noted. He has schemes. He has a trick or a trap that he attempts to play. Well, do you got a plan? Boy, a great question to ask in any family or marriage is, what's the plan? what's the plan, kids? What's the plan for you to resist Satan? Honey, what's the plan for us to make sure that both of us don't end up devoured? In Proverbs 7, there's a picture of a young man, and oh, he is rather, I guess I would say he's rather aimless. He heads into the wrong part of town. He's down near where a prostitute hangs out, and he reminds me of just somebody who says, I'm not really down here to get in any trouble or anything. It's not like I'm coming down here to actually meet a prostitute, but I know that's the part of town, and my plan is not to resist. And rather it's, well, let's just see what happens. And she shows up, and man, is she cunning. Hey, he's aimless, but she's not aimless. She sells it. She says, I've come out to meet you. Well, she would have said that to anyone that she had met. All he was convenient that night. Oh, and she paints this picture of what it's back at home with all these tapestries and how beautiful the bed is and the incense and the man is gone. The man has taken a bag of money with him and the man's not going to be back for like a week or so. So there's no danger of them of being caught. And then she sells it as fill our cup with love. It's love, It's just like it was meant to be. And what has struck me in Proverbs chapter 7, and I tell you what, many young men and women have gone down the exact same path. Just aimless, listening to her. It says in verse 21, with her many persuasions, she entices him. With her flattering lips, she seduces him. Then it says 22, suddenly. And suddenly is all about where everything is lost and won at that moment, where there's this precise moment where you yield and there's no going back. And suddenly he follows her. And instead of like, well, it's my lucky day or whatever, no, as an ox goes to the slaughter. And then it says, until an arrow pierces through his liver and a bird hastens to the snare. He's walking right into the trap. He's walking into the jaws of death. So he does not know that it will cost him his life. And other passages make it clear that this house leads to hell, that the dead are there, that this same woman has brought down many men before him. She's a monster. She's a devourer, and she will chew him up and spit him out, and he will be just one more victim. Follow your heart. Keep on trucking. No way. Just see what happens. Yeah, follow your heart. End up paying decades of child support and alimony because you got in a relationship that maybe was not wise. Now, that's not to say that everyone that gets divorced made a bad choice. That other spouse has their own choice, but guaranteed, if you go in aimless, good things are not going to happen. Yeah, follow your heart and you'll end up with venereal disease and all sorts of problems. Are we underestimating him? Are we aimless? I like what my wife's mom had said. The things that are going to trip you up in life are not the things you've already made up your mind about. That's not what's going to trip you up. It's those temptations that you have not made a decision right now. What would you do in that situation? That's going to trip you up. Because when the situation arises, you don't have time to think. And if you think, you're dead. You need to make up your mind beforehand. You need to be like Joseph. Joseph had a plan. Flee. Get out of there. Run for your life. Because your soul's on the line. Your eternity's on the line. Your earthly happiness is on the line. Well, are we underestimating him by foolishly dabbling in sin or walking the line? My friend, Satan owns the property line between good and evil. not prioritizing our prayer life, not putting a premium on meeting with believers and meditating upon scriptures, filling your heart with secular wisdom, man's wisdom, rather than God's, a lack of good and strong spiritual friendships, lots of friends, but all the non-Christian friends. Many friends comes to ruin. And I think the idea that in order to have a whole lot of friends, typically you have to compromise. Jesus is saying, Luke chapter 6, woe when all men speak well of you. If you are a faithful Christian, you should have enemies. Not all enemies, but you should have enemies, not because you're obnoxious or you're difficult to deal with, but because you stand for godly principles and you are surrounded by an evil world. Are you more concerned with being popular and liked than being holy? 1 Peter chapter 1 and verse 14 says, be holy, for I am holy. And are you drinking alcohol? Proverbs 23:23. Read those passages. Who has woe? Who has woe and who has the problem? Wine is a mocker. Proverbs chapter 20 and verse 1. I tell you what, you need to be sober-minded. You've got the devil after you, seeking someone to devour. You need your wits about you. There is no room for error here. You cannot be indulging in a substance that dulls your senses when you're up against Satan. You got to be on your game. You have to have your wits about you. And your tongue is going to be hard enough to control. And your thoughts are going to be hard enough to control without bathing every soul of your body in a drink. And my friend, alcohol is the same in the sense of, it's the same as water in the sense that it bathes every cell in your body. No system in your body or your mind is left unaffected by alcohol. It completely covers you when you partake. You can't afford to lose your judgment, and you can't afford to lose your self-discipline and self-control, and you can't afford to lose your courage and your wits about you. You're up. You got really important things to do. You need to be sober-minded. Finally, have we so focused on the physical that we forget that some problems are not physical or merely physical, and something more than a physical cure or a pill is necessary to fight it? Again, I'm not against medication or doctors. I'm grateful for doctors and physicians and just grateful for the healthcare and the healthcare system I have. But before we jump to the conclusion that a mental struggle, a personal struggle that you're going through right now is merely or just physical, make sure your spiritual life is in order. You might be under attack by Satan. Don't rule him out. Before anything, make sure that your mind is set on what is above. Make sure your mind is set on what is true. Philippians 4:8. There are things that only the power of the gospel can release you from. Battles, as Roger would say, you can't pill that. Battles where you need your armor on, Ephesians 6:11 through 13. And having done all to stand. When you come up against Satan, you're going to need something far more powerful than just diet and exercise. And I believe in both of them. I believe in eating healthy and staying fit, all right? But diet and exercise, or a smudge stick, or the latest supplement from Costco. No, there are certain battles that you're going to come up against that you're going to need more than fish oil and pomegranate juice right now, or the latest self-help book. You're going to need God and the power of the gospel. I've been really struck by a number of episodes on other videos, etc., where I've seen by completely secular people, not Christians, who said that even a number of psychologists have come to terms with the fact that there are certain problems that can only be addressed. There are certain problems that can only be overcome, like addiction, like alcoholism, like drug abuse, and also things probably like pornography. The only answer for that is an encounter with God. And I would call that is the only answer to that is conversion. You become a Christian, you bow the knee to Jesus Christ, you submit fully to him, and you follow him. There are just certain things in life that hey friend, you need God. That's a God problem. You need God to help you with that. This is Mark Dunagan for the Daily Answer. Until next time, we'll see you in the funny papers.